Welcome, chosen one. If you are watching this right now, it is not by accident. It is not by coincidence. It is not by luck. You were guided here. Something inside you, deeper than your mind, deeper than your emotions, deeper than anything you can explain to another human being, pulled you toward this screen at this exact moment. And I need you to understand something before we go any further. God does not make mistakes. Not in the stars, not in the seasons, and certainly not in you. You have felt it your entire life. That strange, quiet knowing that you are different, that you do not belong to the ordinary current of this world. That while everyone else around you seems to be satisfied with surface-level living, you are burning. Burning for something deeper, something higher, something real. People have called you too sensitive, too intense, too spiritual, too much. And there were nights, quiet, lonely, heavy nights, where you almost believed them. But let me tell you what they never told you. The ones who cannot understand your fire are not your judges. They are your confirmation. Because every prophet, every deliverer, every world changer throughout history was first misunderstood by the crowd before they were celebrated by generations. Your difference is not a disorder. It is a design. This channel was created for you. Not for the casually curious, not for the spiritually comfortable. For you, the one who weeps in worship and does not know why. The one who dreams things that come true. The one who has walked through fire and somehow came out standing. The one whose enemies watch in silence because they cannot explain your survival. Before we go deeper, if this is already speaking to your spirit, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications. Type "I am chosen" in the comments below to activate what God is about to release over your life in this video. Now, let us talk about what is really happening to you, because your enemies are watching, and they are terrified. There is something on your life that has always confused the people around you, not just your enemies, even your closest friends, even your own family members have looked at you at certain moments with something in their eyes that you could not quite name. It was not admiration exactly. It was not hatred exactly. It was something in between. Something like fear wrapped inside disbelief. Like they were watching a person do something that was not supposed to be possible. And the truth is, you have done things that were not supposed to be possible. You survived situations that should have destroyed you. You recovered from losses that would have broken others permanently. You stood back up from floors that were designed to be your final resting place. And every single time you rose, the room got a little quieter around you. Because people can celebrate your success from a distance. But when they witness your resurrection up close, it unsettles something deep inside them. This is the mark. The mark of the chosen one is not a crown. It is not a title. It is not a platform. It is a pattern. A repeated, undeniable pattern of impossible survival, followed by impossible elevation. And the people who have watched your life closely have seen that pattern. They have tried to find a logical explanation. They have tried to attribute it to luck, to connections, to coincidence. But after a while, even the most skeptical person in your circle runs out of rational explanations. What they are witnessing is the hand of God on a life that was set apart before birth. What they are feeling in their gut when they look at you is the weight of divine assignment they cannot comprehend. You carry something ancient, something powerful, something that does not belong to this ordinary world. Type "marked" in the comments right now if you feel this in your spirit. Let us be honest about something that most spiritual content will never say directly. You have enemies. Real ones. Not just people who dislike you. Not just people who are jealous of your aesthetic or your lifestyle. People who have made it their quiet mission to watch you fail. People who have gathered in rooms you were not invited to and spoken words over your life that were designed to plant seeds of destruction. People who have smiled in your face while watering the roots of your downfall behind your back. And yet, here you are. This is what has broken their strategy. They studied you. They mapped your weaknesses. They calculated the exact points of pressure that should have made you collapse. And when they applied that pressure, you did not collapse. You bent. You bled in private. You cried in places they never saw, but you did not collapse. And that specific, infuriating outcome has turned your enemies into involuntary students of your anointing. Because here is what happens in the spirit realm when a chosen one refuses to break. The attack that was designed to end you becomes a testimony that exposes the attacker. Every weapon formed against you that fails does not just miss its target. It reverses its energy. It comes back as evidence. Evidence that something greater than human strategy is operating on your behalf. Your enemies are quiet right now not because they have given up. They are quiet because they do not understand what they are dealing with. They have thrown everything they had at a life covered by the Most High, and they are sitting in confusion, trying to figure out why their weapons keep malfunctioning. Write, "He fights for me" in the comments if you know God has been your shield when you did not even know the attack was coming.
Houdini was famous for one thing above everything else. Not the tricks, not the showmanship, the escapes. The man was locked in chains, sealed in boxes, submerged underwater, buried alive, and he came out every single time. And the crowd did not just applaud. They were disturbed. Because there is something profoundly unsettling about watching a person emerge from something that was specifically designed to contain them permanently. This is your spiritual biography. Think about every trap that was set for your life. Think about the relationship that was designed to drain your identity until there was nothing left of you. Think about the financial situation that should have buried you under a mountain of debt and shame with no visible exit. Think about the diagnosis that came with a timeline attached to it. Think about the season of isolation that was constructed to make you feel so invisible, so forgotten, so alone that you would eventually stop believing in your own calling.
You escaped, not by human cleverness, not by strategic networking, not by willpower alone. You escaped because the God who called you before you were formed in the womb does not allow his assignments to be permanently contained by enemy architecture. Every cage that was built for you had a flaw in its design, a flaw placed there by a God who was already planning your exit before you even entered the trap. And this is the part that drives your enemies absolutely insane. Because they were present when the cage was constructed. They watched it being sealed. Some of them helped seal it. And when you walked out free, not broken, not bitter, not destroyed, but free, something in their understanding of the world cracked. Because your escape did not follow the laws of their logic. You are walking, breathing, testifying evidence that God is real and that He is specific. He did not just save someone somewhere generically. He saved you, by name, from that specific trap, in that specific season. Type, "I escaped" in the comments if God brought you out of something that had no human exit. But let us not romanticize this without telling the whole truth. Because the chosen life is not a life of constant visible triumph. Between every public miracle is a private wilderness. And that wilderness is real, and it is heavy, and it costs you things that the crowd never sees when they celebrate your outcome. There is a price to carrying the impossible. It shows up in the relationships you had to release because they were not built to hold the weight of what God placed inside you. It shows up in the years of preparation that look to the outside world like stagnation, like failure, like irrelevance, while inside, God was doing surgical work in the hidden places of your character that the public version of your calling required. It shows up in the loneliness, the specific, particular loneliness of a person who can see clearly in the spirit, but has very few people in their immediate circle who can see what they see or feel what they feel. You have sat in rooms full of people and felt completely alone. You have tried to share what God was doing inside you and watched the person across from you glaze over because they did not have the capacity to receive it. You have carried visions so large that speaking them out loud felt embarrassing. so you learn to carry them in silence. And silence, over years, becomes a very particular kind of weight. This is part of the cost, and God has not been blind to it. Every year of obscurity was registered. Every prayer prayed alone in a room where no one applauded was recorded. Every tear that fell in a season no one else understood was collected. The scripture does not lie when it says He stores every tear in a bottle, because God does not waste your pain. He catalogs it. He converts it. He makes it the currency of your next miracle. Write, "You saw me in the wilderness," if God kept you even when the season looked like abandonment. Here is a question worth sitting with. Why does the impossible keep happening to you specifically? Not in a naive prosperity gospel kind of way, but genuinely, if you look back over your life with honest eyes, you will notice a recurring pattern. Situations that statistically should not have resolved in your favor did. Opportunities that had no logical pathway to reach you found you anyway. Encounters that changed the entire direction of your life happened in moments you were not prepared for and could not have engineered yourself. Why you? The answer is not that you are better than others. The chosen life is never about superiority. It is about assignment. God selects specific lives to carry specific demonstrations of His power in specific generations. Not because those people are more deserving, but because they said yes to something in the spirit that most people walk past without noticing. You said yes to the hunger. You said yes to the pain of growth. You said yes to the call even when you did not fully understand what you were agreeing to. And when a life fully surrendered to God enters a situation, the equation of that situation changes. Because you are not just bringing your human resources to the problem. You are bringing a divine backing that operates by entirely different laws than the natural world recognizes. Your enemies bring strategy. God brings sovereignty. And sovereignty does not negotiate with strategy. It overrides it. This is why the impossible keeps following your life. Not because you are lucky, because you are loaded. Loaded with assignment. Loaded with grace. Loaded with a backing that your enemies can sense even when they cannot see it. They feel the weight of what walks with you before they can explain it. And that is why they watch you the way they do. Like they are watching someone operate in a dimension they do not have access to. Comment, "Loaded with grace," if you know it is God and not just you making things happen. There is a pattern in the lives of every person God has ever used powerfully, and once you see it, you will never be able to unsee it. Every single one of them was told, explicitly, clearly, sometimes cruelly, that what they were believing God for was impossible. Not just unlikely, impossible. And in almost every case, the louder and more confidently the opposition declared the impossibility, the closer the miracle actually was. Think about that for your own life. Think about the times you shared a vision, a dream, a step of faith with someone who looked at you and with complete sincerity told you it could not be done, that it was too late, that you had missed your window, that people like you do not get opportunities like that the gap was too wide, the damage too permanent, the obstacles too established. And yet, here you are. I want to reframe something for you permanently. When a person tells you that your dream is impossible, they are not giving you an assessment of reality. They are giving you an assessment of their own ceiling. They are looking at your calling through the narrow window of their own limitations and reporting back to you what they can see from that limited vantage point. But your calling was not designed to fit inside their window. It was designed to shatter it. God specifically selects assignments that exceed human capacity precisely so that when they are accomplished, no human being can take the credit. If your vision is something you could achieve entirely on your own with your current resources, it probably does not require God. But if your vision requires a miracle, if it requires divine timing, supernatural provision, and the kind of favor that has no natural explanation, then you are operating in the exact territory where God does his most visible work. Let them say it is impossible. That is your cue. That is God's signal that he is about to show up in a way that will leave everyone in the room without a word. Type, "Impossible is my testimony," right now. You need to understand what the fear in your enemy's eyes is actually communicating. Because most chosen ones misread it. They see the discomfort others have around their anointing and they interpret it as a personal rejection. They feel the tension in the room when they walk in and they assume something is wrong with them. They notice the way certain people study them and they internalize it as judgment. But you have been misreading the signal. The fear in their eyes is not rejection, it is prophecy. When people who have witnessed your journey begin to look at you with something that resembles awe mixed with unease, they are not reacting to who you are now. They are reacting to who they can sense you are becoming. There is something in the human spirit that can detect elevation even before it manifests in the natural realm. And when people around a chosen one begin to feel an involuntary shift, when conversations change, when attitudes adjust, when people who once dismissed you suddenly start watching your every move, that is not social politics. That is spiritual awareness. The enemy always sends intelligence ahead of the attack. Your enemies watching you so carefully is evidence that something in the spirit has already signaled your breakthrough before it arrived in the natural world. They feel it coming. And that is why their behavior shifts. That is why the person who ignored you for years suddenly has opinions about your decisions. That is why people who should have been irrelevant to your journey have become suddenly very interested in the details of your life. Do not be disturbed by this. Be anchored in it. Because the same God who allowed your enemies to sense your elevation is the same God who will ensure that what they fear comes to pass exactly as he designed it. Their fear is not your problem. It is your preview. It is a prophetic indicator that what God told you in secret is about to become visible in public. Write, "My elevation is their confirmation," in the comments. One of the hardest parts of the chosen life is the hiddenness. The season where God is doing the deepest work in you is almost always the season where you feel the most invisible to the world. And in a culture that equates visibility with value, that hiddenness can feel like punishment. It can feel like God has forgotten your address. It can feel like everyone else is moving forward while you are standing still in a waiting room with no announced departure time. But hiddenness is not abandonment. It is preparation. Every person who has ever carried a great assignment was first hidden long enough to become ready for what the assignment actually required. Moses was in the wilderness for 40 years before God spoke from the burning bush. 40 years of stripping away the identity of Egyptian royalty to replace it with the identity of a deliverer. Joseph was in a pit, then a prison, before he was placed in a palace. And every layer of that descent was removing from him the naive arrogance of youth and replacing it with the seasoned wisdom of a man fit to govern a nation. Your hiddenness is producing something in you that visibility would have destroyed. Because if God had promoted you to the level of your calling before he had prepared you to the level of your character, the weight of the assignment would have crushed you. The enemies who are watching you have no idea that the years they interpreted as your decline were actually God's curriculum. They looked at your silent season and assumed you were finished. They celebrated too early. They closed their file on you before God finished writing your chapter. And now the preparation is meeting the moment. Now the character that was forged in the wilderness is being summoned for the assignment that the wilderness was always preparing you to carry. The hiddenness was not the end. It was the incubation. Comment, "I was being prepared, not forgotten," if this speaks to where you have been. There is a miracle coming for your life that will do something beyond simply blessing you. It will silence every voice that has spoken against your destiny. Not through argument, not through confrontation, not through you having to defend yourself or prove your worth to anyone who doubted you. It will silence them the way only God can silence opposition, with a visible, undeniable, publicly witnessed outcome that leaves no room for alternative interpretation. You have been in seasons where you had to defend your faith, seasons where you had to explain why you were still standing, still believing, still declaring promises over a life that, from the outside, did not yet show the evidence of what you were claiming. And some of those conversations were exhausting, because you cannot fully convince someone with words of what only God can demonstrate with reality. But the miracle is coming that will close every open argument. And it will not be a small, easily explainable shift. It will be the kind of outcome that makes even your most committed skeptic go quiet in a room, because there is no human explanation available for what they are witnessing. It will be a turnaround so complete, a restoration so thorough, an elevation so sudden and so specific that everyone who knew your before will have no choice but to acknowledge that something beyond natural mechanics was operating in your life. This is the testimony that God is building in your waiting. Not just so that your life improves, though it will, but so that your life becomes a demonstration, a living, breathing, walking argument for the reality of a God who sees, who remembers, who keeps His word, and who takes very specific, very personal interest in the lives of the ones He has called. Type, "My testimony is coming," to seal this declaration over your life right now. I want to close this with something that I need you to receive not just in your mind, but in the deepest part of who you are. Because there is a lie that has followed you through almost every season of your life, and it is time to call it exactly what it is. The lie says, you are too much, too intense, too spiritual, too sensitive, too ambitious, too focused, too driven, too different. And because that lie has been delivered not just by strangers, but by people you loved and trusted, it went in deep. It settled in places that are hard to reach with ordinary encouragement. And it has shaped decisions to shrink, to soften, to edit yourself, to make yourself smaller and more manageable and more acceptable to rooms that were never designed to hold who you actually are. But I need you to hear this from the God who made you. You were never too much. You were always the right amount, the exact right amount for the assignment He designed you to carry. The intensity they could not handle is the fuel your calling requires. The sensitivity they called weakness is the antenna through which God communicates direction to your spirit. The difference they could not understand is the specific configuration of gifts and perspectives and spiritual depth that your generation needs from you. You were not made to fit. You were made to expand. You were not made to be understood by everyone. You were made to be used by God in ways that will eventually be understood by history. And every person who told you that you were too much was simply someone who had not yet been assigned to your chapter. Because the people who are supposed to walk with you in your calling will not be overwhelmed by your fire. They will be ignited by it. So rise, fully, without apology, without editing, without shrinking to accommodate ceilings that were never yours to respect. Write, "I am not too much. I am chosen," in the comments right now. Say it. Declare it. Let the atmosphere shift around you as you own what God has always known about you. This is your season. This is your moment. This is your activation. God sees you. God knows you. God has chosen you, not despite everything you have been through, but precisely because of everything you have survived and everything you are still becoming. The impossible is not behind you. The greatest chapters of what God will do through your life are still ahead. Stay close to this channel, stay close to God, and never, ever let anyone convince you that the life you are carrying is ordinary, because the evidence of heaven disagrees.